I was playing with a cover band at the time called Undercover, and I got a call from the show was promoted by Ron and Rich Onesti, who have now become really the premier concert promoters in the Midwest. They run the historic Arcada Theater and a number of other places in Chicago and the surrounding area. Ron called me up and said, Joe, I know I know you play and I know you're a great music fan. How would you like to play with Chuck Berry? So I'm thinking he's talking about open the show for Chuck Berry because I was playing in a cover band. And I said, oh, you mean open the show? And he said, no, he's, I got to supply a band. If you get a piano player and a drummer, it's your gig. So he said, I'm assuming you're familiar with Chuck Berry. And I said, Ron, I've been listening to him since I was a little kid. I could still picture that purple blue chest 45 of Sweet Little 16 spinning repeatedly on my record player. So he said, okay, you get the piano player and the drummer and you got the gig.
Now, did you practice ahead of time on Chuck Berry songs to familiarize yourself?
Well, what I did was I listened. It was one of those things where there wasn't a great amount of time between the call and the show, so there wasn't a lot of time to get scared. So what I did was listening to Chuck Berry stuff continuously, and then because you don't know what he's going to play, it's difficult to rehearse. But there was one night where the drummer and the piano player came to my house, and we just listened to a bunch of Chuck Berry stuff and just sort of tried to set up a game plan the best we could under the circumstances, not knowing what he was going to be playing.
Now, doesn't Chuck, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Chuck Berry play in keys that are sort of guitar unfriendly, like E flat, B flat, F?
Yes, he plays in all. He plays in many flat keys, and the interesting thing was, when we met him for just about 5 minutes before, before the show was going to start. Little Richard was the opener. I'll get to that in a second, but. Before the show was going to start, I said to him, look, I know you don't have a set list, but are you at least going to signal the keys to songs, when you're going into a new song? And he said, no, man. He said, we're going to go out there and play Chuck Berry songs, and you guys jump in whenever you feel it's right. I said, okay, and that was that.
How old were you when you did this?
This was in 2000, so...
All right.
What the hell? I was like 48.
All right.
48. Yeah.
Okay. So you couldn't have been that intimidated. So what song did Chuck Berry kick off with?
Well, here's the funny thing. So, I'm out there and I'm getting my bass ready and I have the rig that the promoters provided, right. And the drummer's up, sort of adjusting things, and the piano player's getting ready, and there's no announcement. All of a sudden I hear a guitar and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I look up and he had just walked out on stage, no announcement, picked up his guitar, plugged it in. He had two Fender Dual Showmans turned on their sides.
Okay.
Plugged in and started playing some blues song. And then what he did was he started playing a different song in a different key right away. Mm. And I, in retrospect, I think what he was doing, it was sort of a challenge to say, hey, I'm the guy that's in charge here.
Chuck was very particular. He says, just play the root, just stay in the pocket. He didn't want bass players to get fancy because, with those 7 chords, you can throw in quite a few things like Senny likes to throw in double stops, I'm told.
Right.
Did Chuck give you any indication like, hey, man, just stick to the root, stick to the pocket?
He told me play bump, 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 bump. And that's what I did. And about halfway through the show, he came over to me and said, hey, you can loosen up. Now, okay. You got to have the context of this.
Okay.
Before we go on, Little Richard and his band opened the show.
Wow.
Okay? Little Richard at that point, this is October 21 of 2000. Little Richard was an Orthodox Jew, and he couldn't travel until the sun went down. And this was a sunny October day, and And so the Little Richard had to be delayed until the sun went down so he could travel. And Chuck wouldn't flip and open the show and let Little Richard close. So we shared the dressing room with Little Richard's band, and I'm saying this in a respectful way. It was
Right.
like the Blues Brothers, go in there and here's these guys. They're in these green, sparkle shirts, and you know the look, okay, and it's cool, and and there's a bunch of guys, and I'm thinking, wow, I wonder if some of these guys road guys or what's the deal. So anyway, they go up on stage. I'm back sort of getting myself organized, and now they're playing. And there was a runway that walked up to the stage. And I walked up the runway, and literally it was like somebody was punching my chest. That's how strong the band was.
Wow.
And he had two of everything, two bass players.
Wow.
Two bass players, two drummers, two guitar players, two keyboard players, two saxes, two trumpets, and two trombones. So you can imagine the sound. You hear all these horror stories about him.
Right.
He really, when he realized we knew he was the boss and we were going to do whatever he wanted us to do. I had a lot of interaction with him where we were playing in each other's faces.
Interesting.
He told me that I could loosen up a bit. And before he walked off the stage, he took a bow in front of each one of us.
Oh, okay.
Which was very nice. And one of the funny things that happened, his guitar, he had his Gibson guitar, and the strings were, like when we first got our instruments as kids, and the strings, you needed a vice grip to be able to hold them down. So I'm looking at his guitar, and his strings are really high off the fretboard. And in the middle of the show, he comes over to me, and we're in the middle of a song, and he says, "Can you play this?" And I looked down at the neck of his guitar, and I said, "No, I only play bass," because everything was going really great. And I thought, if I take his guitar, I'm going to have a hard time playing it, number one. But number two, his guitar didn't sound so great.
Okay.
And I thought, I'm going to take his guitar, and something that's going really well is going to turn into something really bad. So I just said, no, I don't play sixth string. I only play bass.
Stay in the boat.
Yeah, and at one point, he just took his guitar off and went over by the piano player, who's a guy that I play in One of the Boys with, and he put his hands on his shoulders. I mean, it was a really nice thing, and he actually did a little piano thing with him. And
wow.
I still have it. I have a Danelectro Longhorn, one of the reissues from the late '90s. It's an Aquaburst, and I wanted to play that with him, but I got a white Fender Music Man as well, and I brought that along, and I would have played that if I had to, but I thought, I don't know what his reaction is going to be to this Danelectro bass. And so when I told you how he came walking out and just started playing this blues, these blues riffs, and he comes over by me, and he looks at my bass, and I'm starting to now think, uh-oh. And I'm also thinking, I'm glad I've got this, Fender Music Master right off to my left. And he looks at my face, and he looks down at the bass again, and he looks at my face, and he turns and walks away. And he never says anything about it. And I thought, geez, that's odd. And I had seen Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll years earlier.
Right, Joey Sampanato played a Danelectro.
Right. So that's where I'm going with it. In fact, I'm interviewing Joey Spampanato today at 1.
Excellent.
So anyway, what happens is, a couple weeks later, I decided to watch Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll, and I realized Joey Spampanato was playing that Longhorn. Right. And the only thing I can think of is that he came out and he saw that bass, and he's like, is this that guy from the movie? So he's looking at my face, looking at the bass, looks at my face, and then walks away.